American Conspiracy: The Murder of Integrity, Credibility and Truth, Part 6. This podcast is dedicated to the memory of Danny Casolaro. Please visit my website, the 6i website, at the6i.org/podcasts, and you will see there's a huge collection of podcasts that have been recorded based on research over 24 years. We have thousands of interviews with witnesses. 80% of them have sadly passed away. Historical records. It's based on legal evidence, and it looks at the evidence of the investigations that Danny Casolaro was looking into, the theft of the PREVAILS software, the Iran-Contra arms and tow missile, BCCI, and also the Iraq Gate, the $2 billion arms deal that Danny Casolaro was looking into. He had incredible evidence, and you will find that his evidence was all going to Australia. He had planned to visit Australia for a whole week, and he wanted to meet with the Royal Commissioners for our Royal Commissions, investigations, inquiries in Australia, several of them, looking into the evidence of CIA together with organised crime, the mafia, were trafficking drugs, arms and gold bullion through the banks in Australia, particularly the Nugan Bank and other Australian banks. He was also looking at the Costigan Royal Commission, which was leading directly to Robert Booth Nichols's and Wackenhart's arms deals with the mafia, CIA and illegal arms through Australia, and then the Western Australian Royal Commission, which was the evidence of Iran-Contra arms and Iraq Gate arms being transferred through Australia, involving Earl Bryan, CIA, and Ari Ben-Menashe with the Israeli military intelligence. You will find this website is dedicated to the memory of Danny, and it has the full endorsement of Trey Casolaro, the son of Danny Casolaro, who together we've been trying to win justice, to have the investigation reopened, given the overwhelming evidence of the motives to kill Danny Casolaro and the evidence that will be revealed, particularly in the next podcast, of the evidence covered up by Martinsburg Police, US Treasury and IRS, FBI, and the Department of Justice. The evidence that Danny Casolaro did not commit suicide. He had the smoking gun. Gordon Savelle, Canadian investigative journalist and film producer, and myself are completing our book after 24 years, and we're hoping to publish it later this year. What we're going to reveal to you now is, I've titled this one, When Ethics Fails and Groupthink Prevails. And I'm going to present to you the serious allegations made by Bobby Riconosciuto, the wife of Michael Riconosciuto, who's in prison, that her documents were stolen by Cherie Seymour through deception. Her allegation is that she tricked her into allowing her to take all the original documents that Michael needed for his legal defense, and she refused to return them when requested. I'm also going to present to you that I have witnessed firsthand her poor ethics, and together with her publisher, given that those documents legally belong to Michael Riconosciuto, it is his legal property, it is his intellectual property, and he gave strict instructions to her to transfer them to me in Australia. And her decision to renege and keep them so that she could produce the American Conspiracy, the Octopus Murders, the Netflix series, with Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats, in breach of the clear instructions given by Michael Riconosciuto. I have witnessed firsthand her poor ethics and her willingness to exploit them, exploit the documents for commercial gain, personal fame, together with Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats. I have written to Netflix expressing my serious concerns, needing urgent confirmation that Netflix is committed to high standards of credibility and integrity. I've called it When Ethics Fails and Groupthink Prevails because that's the title of a legal paper written by the Australian Senate attorney after witnessing my efforts in 1995 to shut down over $2 billion of research and development tax frauds. He was so impressed with my understanding of legal matters and so impressed with my individual efforts that he titled that because the problem was known to everyone within governments, and it was only me that pointed out that this was wrong. And so I think it's befitting, given the evidence that I'm going to present to you, particularly the recorded interviews that both Gordon Savell and I have, and our communications and legal evidence of what the producers of the Netflix series have done. Now, I have not received any confirmation back as requested from the chairman of Netflix or the board that they share my values and standards for credibility and integrity, given the evidence is that the producers have deceived Trey Casolaro and myself and Gordon Savell and Michael Riconosciuto and Bill Hamilton, and have produced a Netflix series based on a conspiracy, a fraud. And it's also based on stolen property, allegedly stolen. And that is the key part to the question being put forward to the board of Netflix. Now, they can decide not to respond to me, that's fine. But I think, given that my area of expertise is intellectual property and the theft of intellectual property, and there are two TV documentaries in Australia that Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats have watched and applauded, I don't know how long the attorney of Netflix will ignore my correspondence. The summary of the Netflix series are these statements by Christian Hansen. The only person in the room with Danny Casolaro that could have killed Danny Casolaro is Danny Casolaro. We have never seen any evidence that confirms he didn't commit suicide. We believe it's 51% versus 49% probability that he committed suicide versus he was murdered. Previous podcasts, I've shown overwhelming evidence of correspondence that Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats deceived and lied to Trey Casolaro and me, and they deliberately withheld credible legal evidence of research and knowledge and experience that I have in Australia relevant to everything that Danny Casolaro was investigating. And so this podcast, the Netflix series American Conspiracy, The Octopus Murder, is based upon alleged stolen documents that legally belong to Michael Riconosciuto. As you can see, top right-hand corner, I had been interviewing Cherie Seymour and Gordon and I since 2004. And when she found out that we were planning to do a TV series in Australia, she wanted to work with us. Now, I don't give much credibility to her book. It's based on documents that relate to contracts with Cabazon, with Michael's companies, Hercules Research, together with Paul Maraska's company, and also with Wackenhut and Robert Booth Nichols' company on weapons, on technologies and research related to advanced weaponry. but also in terms of gold bullion, the processing of gold bullion and precious metals. And all of the documents that she's citing, she has no understanding of it. I have recorded thousands of interviews with Michael. It relates to advanced physics, mathematics, computing, and technologies that she's not qualified in. She has no idea what she's talking about. More important, all of the letterheads that they're all flashing on the screen, the weapons and the deals, they have no understanding of the contracts that are in Australia with our government and with other criminal organisations that are selling the arms with the mafia worldwide to Iran, Iraq, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia with CIA. I do. I've been in the chambers of the Royal Commissioners asking very simple questions to confirm the validity of it, and I've even spoken to the directors of research in Australia with our military, who still say that they're classified top secret. I also know that firsthand. So everything that Cherie Seymour talks about in her book is fantasy. She has no idea what it means, and hence after 24 years of helping Michael, in fact, it's me that's trying to help prove that what he has been saying in court under oath is true and proven in Australia, and everything that Danny Casolaro was investigating was not a conspiracy, was not fantasy, but was true. I called her and asked her if she needed the documents anymore. Now, what she didn't know is that we've interviewed Bobby Riconosciuto. And we're going to play those interviews in this podcast. She confirmed to me in writing and on the telephone several times that she's finished her book, she's not planning to do anything, and she'll happily send them to me as long as Michael Riconosciuto, who is, she says, the legal owner of these documents, instructs her to do it, to send them to me. So within a week I do it, and on the 6th of September, Michael sends his letter through Bill Hamilton, fax across to me in Australia, and I get it straight back to her that Michael would like all the original documents, as you can see in that photograph below, transferred to Australia, to Peter Osborne, because I know what they mean. I also know what isn't in there that I have, and how important it is for the proof, the legal proof of what Michael had been giving under testimony was true. After she receives it, she reneges. I send across the letter to her. I confirm I'm willing to immediately transfer full payment through PayPal to her for the courier costs. And then she advises me. She informs me that her book publisher, Chris Milligan, has advised her that she cannot release the boxes of the original documents to me in Australia in case they are faced with litigation following their publication of the book and production of a film and TV series to be based upon her book and the documents. Isn't that interesting? Chris Milligan's worried about litigation. Why? Now, the question I'm asking Netflix attorneys, the chairman of their board, were they ever told that even the publisher, Chris Milligan, was worried that there could be litigation given that the Netflix series and the book that it's based upon and the documents that they're copying on the TV series could be facing litigation? That's an interesting question for the attorneys of Netflix to clarify. Did they know? Next, Cherie Seymour confirms to me that she will alternatively allow Christian Hansen to have full access and copy all the boxes of documents, as Christian Hansen is scheduled to travel to her house to review and copy all the documents. Now, this is in 2016. There is no way known that we're going to allow some kid to get all the original documents when it's authorised. I've been dealing with Michael Riconosciuto since 2004 by letters. There is no way known that we're allowing this to take place. And then I immediately advised her in writing she's not authorised to provide copies of the documents that legally belong to Michael Riconosciuto to any other third party. She's already received instructions from Michael Riconosciuto, the legal owner, to send all the original documents immediately to me in Australia. At this point, Chris Milligan steps in. So there's my correspondence. I'm telling her to put on hold the transfer of the documents to Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats because Michael's given the instructions there to come to me. And we at this stage do not know that they're planning to do a Netflix series. And I must make that point known to you. We did not know at that point. And I say, I understand from the letter of 6th of September written by Mo that he only gave permission for the documents to be released to myself in Australia. Please refrain from distributing the documents to other parties until I receive instructions. I just need to confirm with Michael and his attorneys that this is his desire. And of course, it's not. I then send proof to Michael several years later that they're copying all the documents. Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats are copying all the documents on the Netflix series and on video as evidence for the story. And their whole series is to defame Michael Riconosciuto and defame Bill Hamilton and defame Danny Casolaro. Now, as if Michael would like to do that, and as if Bill would like to do that, and hence that's why I'm writing to the chairman of Netflix and their attorney and board, is these sources, Michael Riconosciuto and Bill Hamilton, had pulled out after they felt that they were being betrayed and defamed. They wanted nothing to do with it, and they still went on and exploited the documents and went off to interview sources. There is the legal proof. The letter, the photograph of the documents that she sends to me, Cherie Seymour sends to me that this is a copy of the documents. And she decides that instead of doing the legally right thing of returning the original documents to me on behalf of Michael, who's still in prison, she hands them across to Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats. So my next question to the attorney of Netflix, the chairman and the board, did you do any due diligence? Because on this website that's still active today at Amazon, you will see that Anita Langley, who is related to Michael and picked him up from prison, had written in her review of Cherie's book, confirming what she has done is predatory and beyond theft. Miss Seymour took advantage of his terrified wife and offered to help, then vanished with the documents while the family was shattered and Michael was left with nothing for his defence. Now, we have our recorded interviews. We've got probably 15 hours of our interviews. This is Gordon Savelle with Bobby Riconosciuto before she passed away. And we know for a fact the circumstances under which Cherie Seymour had tricked Bobby to allow her to take all the documents, collect them, and put them at her house. These are the original documents that she needs for Michael's lawyers and defence. And we will be playing part of that for you to listen to. And so in summary there, it also says the fact that she gets right are muddled by her interpretation. The lives she ruined cannot be put back together. We actually have our recorded interviews with Ray Levas, who is defamed, and his life was destroyed in Canada due to misinterpretation of documents that she's holding that implicated him, which were not true. More importantly, the fact is that it's full of errors, and I'll say again, she has no qualifications to understand any of those documents at all. They relate to contracts in Australia, in advanced weaponry, they and major arms deals through Australia, which we have all the records on, and it also relates to the confidential research that Michael was doing at Hercules Research, and I have interviewed him and spoken to people who work with him. And the incredible research that he's done is so advanced that to defame him is criminal. So we're going to have a look at what Cherie Seymour said to Bobby Riconosciuto in order to persuade her to hand over all the original boxes of documents and not return them when requested. This is an article, November 92, and it is confirming that Bobby Riconosciuto is being arrested at the same time, conveniently, that Michael's being arrested. And here's an article written by Harry Martin, who we've interviewed and particularly have looked at all of his research on the Promissory, the theft of Inslaw's Promis software, and says here the greatest argument Michael Riconosciuto had with his wife Bobby was over whether or not he should testify before Congress, US bankruptcy court, and a federal grand jury. Bobby told Michael that his testimony would destroy their life, and she was right. Michael, in providing his testimony, warned Congress and the courts that he had been threatened. Should he testify, he would be arrested, and his wife would lose custody of a battle involving her children with a former marriage. The threats were carried in Washington Times, St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and the Napa Sentinel. Within a week of Riconosciuto's testimony, he was arrested by federal agents. Look at this. The federal agent who arrested Michael Riconosciuto after his congressional declaration is now the same agent who called the Napa County District Attorney's Office to have Bobby arrested. After Riconosciuto's arrest, Bobby went into hiding, and she and her family had been threatened and their home broken into. Both Bobby and Michael felt that the children were as much in danger as they were. Michael possessed the knowledge that could destroy powerful forces in and out of Washington, and that's true. So, in 2004, Gordon Savell recorded his interviews with Bobby Riconosciuto, the wife of Michael Riconosciuto. And her allegation on tape is that she was deceived and that the original documents were stolen under false pretenses by Cherie Seymour. She states, Cherie Seymour deceived me and stole the original documents that legally belonged to Michael, and she has obstructed justice. Cherie Seymour told Michael and me that she needed the original documents for a high-level government official who wanted to help to release Michael from prison. Cherie Seymour refused to return the original documents, and she refused to reveal the name of this so-called high-level government official. Isn't that interesting? Why do you need the original documents to write a book? You could have had copies. You didn't need the originals. And why does Chris Milligan feel that he has to keep them instead of transferring them to me in Australia in case there's litigation over your book or the Netflix series? And this is another recorded interview we have in 2004 with Bobby Riconosciuto. That's Cherie Seymour's communicating directly with Robert Booth Nichols. She says, I caught Cherie Seymour on a payphone at the hotel speaking to Robert Booth Nichols, and she was telling him where we are hiding. This is Bobby Riconosciuto and her children. Well, I can tell you right now, Cherie, I've got a recorded interview with someone that was with her who knows Robert Booth Nichols. And he has testified that this is true. He witnessed Robert Booth Nichols arriving in the car park on that night at midnight, stepping out in the car park, trying to find the room where Bobby Riconosciuto and the children are hiding. And I've also interviewed the Australian journalist who was interviewing and helping Michael Riconosciuto, and also interviewing and helping Bobby Riconosciuto. And she was there also. And that's the original Australian Current Affair documentary on the theft of the Proma software sold to ASIO, the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation in Australia, in 1992. You know, all the film footage that you, Christian and Zachary are showing on the screen as if it's original, that's from Australia. That's relevant to the people that I know. So let's listen to Gordon Savell's interview with Bobby Riconosciuto.
Concerns me about her is this, more than anything else. I'm concerned that she's got documents that might be vital.
Sure she does.
Well,
She won't give them up.
And she won't.
Give them up. No, I mean, now see, here's my theory on the whole thing with Cherie Seymour and Linda.
Mm-hmm.
It is my belief that I should invoke the durable power of attorney that I never would use under any other circumstances, and file theft in both cases and have them go retrieve the damn things.
That's what I told Anita Langley.
And to also say, and in my opinion as well, it is obstruction of justice, especially when it comes to Cherie. Cherie talks very openly to hundreds and hundreds of people about the importance of those documents that she told me and Michael were going directly into the hands of someone official who could help Michael.
She told me the same thing.
And she won't say who. Matter of fact, the last conversation I had with her, that's what she said.
How long ago since you last talked to her?
I talked to her during Michael's pre-sentence report.
You're going back to 1991.
1990. His trial wasn't until 92.
Yeah, so you're going back 13, 14 years.
13 years.
13 years. I talked to her a few months ago, and I was in regular contact with her, and then she broke off contact.
Where's she living these days?
She lives in San Diego, I believe, or near San Diego, I think.
That's what I thought.
And
I thought it was near Long Beach, but...
No, I think it's near San Diego. And she told me that she is writing a book.
Of course she is.
That she has a book publisher.
Yeah. That was the last thing I heard, too. Yeah, goody.
I heard that
she has a real publisher now?
I think she's actually got a real publisher from Los Angeles. And she sent me an email.
I wonder how the publisher would like being in the midst of a lawsuit over obstruction of justice.
They wouldn't.
That's what I'm thinking.
But
I know I tend sometimes just to fantasize bad things for these people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they all say. As soon as Danny was dead, all these people I never heard of are suddenly, really, really close to him.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Gosh, maybe you should not break off communication with her and ask her if I can have the originals back. I'll go down and get them. Don't tell her where I live. But...
No, you need to get a lawyer to do that for you and do it properly.
I know. I think Baffardi tried. I think Baffardi was quoted a couple of times.
And you need to have somebody that can take the bull by the horns and do it properly.
Yeah, right.
And go in and get those records. And are you saying that she stole those records?
Some of them she stole, some of them I gave her, but the rest were stolen. For the originals of those I don't have anymore, and I certainly would. It would be better to have it all. If she is, if
you gave her the ones from
truth, then why won't she give them up? You know what? She thinks it's going to ruin her book deal.
I have no idea what motivates her.
That's my point. You know, if her motivation is she's writing a book, that's cool. Keep a copy of it.
I heard she was...
the original documents back so I can help Michael like you said you were doing when you got the damn things. Nichols, she was talking to Bob.
She told Robert Booth Nichols.
She told him where I was staying. On a payphone. I heard her do it.
This is when you were at the Knott's Berry Farm Hotel.
It was a Crown Sterling Suites that Pat Moriarty had an interest in, because we didn't want to stay at the Holiday Inn in La Mirada, which Marshall and Pat had an interest in.
In 2004, Gordon Savell interviewed Louis Baffardi, who was an attorney assisting Michael Riconosciuto with his defence. I will be doing a follow-up podcast on the whole area of where Lou Baffardi was assisting Michael to reveal confidential information relating to 9/11 that was ignored by FBI and White House pre-9/11 attack. But today, let's listen to Gordon Savell's interview with Louis Baffardi, particularly about the question we want to know is, did Cherie Seymour ever have any right to take the original documents that belonged to Michael Riconosciuto and provide them to other third parties?
In the letter that Michael sent me,
because they were investigating Michael and not Bobby.
Oh no, they couldn't give a damn about Bobby.
No, they didn't.
No. But I think it could be, and now I'm stepping out on a limb because I have no proof either, but it could be that Cherie Seymour or Carol Marshall may have been working directly with the FBI, and maybe the FBI gave her the money. But that's neither here nor there. It's irrelevant. And I suppose in the end it's irrelevant whether in fact they paid her for the documents. It's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, the more important issue is, did they have a legal right to take those documents? And I don't know American law.
No, they didn't have a right to take them.
Well, there you go. So then the RCMP don't have the right to have them either.
You know, I think it was Carol who once told me that McDade was coming across the border illegally.
Yes, that's a fact.
Okay.
Not only did he come across the border illegally, he operated in the United States illegally without the authority of the FBI. And we've been told through our investigation that, I say we because I'm working with John Belton, one of the Canadian sources, that the RCMP, the FBI was furious about it and then launched an investigation, their own investigation, into Sean McDade.
They did, huh?
That's what I was told. That they subsequently...
Well, they probably did, because this is a very touchy subject with those people.
Well, sure.
Because most 90%, I don't know about 90, but 90% of the people in the Northwest knew that Michael was framed and wasn't doing dope up there.
No, I don't think Mike's
and
a doper.
Gunderson is a prime example. I mean, he knows all about that case. He's written extensively on the internet about it.
Oh, sure he has.
And he says there was no contamination of the soil.
Well, I have photographs. Another important person in this case is Raymond Lavasse.
Yeah, I know Ray.
Ray is critical. I spent 4 days with Ray. And really,
How's
really...
he doing, by the way?
Jesus Christ, you know, Lou, I had to go to the hospital twice because he was hooked up to kidney dialysis. He's got no kidneys.
He's been having all kinds of problems.
And poor damn Ray is sitting there in the chair in the hospital, hooked up to the machine, literally in tears. He got so emotional as he began to talk about these events that he finally broke down. I think that for 10 years, he's worked and lived in such isolation that he's never found anybody that he could share it with that was, A, wanted to know about it, or B, cared about him. And he met me and felt that, geez, finally here's a guy that's trying to do something right. And so he unloaded.
You ought to just write a book about this whole thing.
Pardon me?
Screenplay.
Yeah, I mean, the idea to get the book out is to set the record straight, and there's no other reason. It's not being done for me on my part for money. But don't take me wrong, Lou. If I can make some money on it, I'll take it. You know, I mean, I've spent 7 months on this, and a lot of money on plane trips and phone calls, and I'm not, you know, and I'm not making any money on it, and there's no books have been published or sold, so I'll take the money. I'll be candid with you, but it's not what motivates me. You know, I'm motivated and more in getting the story out. To the same extent, I guess Danny Casolaro was. Danny Casolaro wanted to rocket his career, but my career's over, Lou. I'm 52 years old. You know, I'm on the downside of life. You know, I'm going to be dead in 25 years or less. So I'm not looking to escalate my journalistic career because my career is on the downside.
Yeah.
I just want to publish it because what happened to Michael was wrong. But not just Michael. What happened to Ray Lavasse was wrong. What happened to William Hamilton, for all his faults, was wrong. You know?
Yep.
And Ted Gunderson is another character whose reputation's been assassinated.
Yeah, that's part of the problem with this thing. You're going to find that all of a sudden there's going to be a lot of rumors running around about you.
Oh, I'm sure there will be. But you know what, Lou? Here's the good news. I have no criminal record. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do drugs. I've never been in trouble. I was in the military. I got an honorable release. I served my country. I worked for the government for 5 years. I had an impeccable record. And I'm a law-abiding. I pay my taxes. I don't cheat one dime on my taxes. I have an accountant. Everything we do is by the books. That's the way I was born and raised. And there's nothing on me that they could besmirch. Nothing. I'm a law-abiding citizen.
Well, that's good.
There were so many tentacles that he was investigating, and you, both Christian and Zachary, when you came to my home, when you called me and wanted to do an interview, I said, sure, come in, you can see all the documents and tapes and whatnot. You wanted to do an interview. I said no. Then you convinced me to do 1 minute, and then I agreed to 1 minute, and then you said, well, how about 3 minutes? I said, okay. And you arrived at my home with this film crew and all this really expensive equipment and lighting and blocking out all my windows from the outside and so on and so forth. And we ended up doing 3 8-hour interviews over a period of 3 days, which was supposed to start it out was supposed to be 3 minutes. And this is, Chris, this is how good these guys are. And you know how hard it is to get an interview with me, right?
Oh, absolutely.
They spent 3 days.
Well,
And they were so professional and so good, and they make me feel like a celebrity, right? I had so much fun being interviewed by Zachary, and Christian was out in the garage. It was February. It was freezing. He's out there with the
San
garage door
Diego.
open.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
freezing in San Diego. Yeah.
Well,
you
it
come
was
visit
to
me,
you.
Sherry, in New York. You'll find it's quite freezing,
Yeah.
actually. This
You
is
were in
actually
you were
freezing.
in a jacket though, with the garage door open, standing there with all the lights on in the garage, photographing boxes and boxes of documents. I mean, you guys are
Sherry's
amazing.
archive is legendary. is the talk. It is the stuff of legend. Her archive of original primary source materials, and she allowed me to spend 3 days copying all of it.
Well, and the other thing is, she said we treated her like a celebrity, but for us, Sherry is a celebrity
That's true.
in this world, and she was, we were just so lucky, basically, because Christian and I mean, I hate to peel back the veil too much on how much of a janky operation we really are running, but we just flew out to California and went from the northernmost point to the southernmost point, essentially meeting people along the way with this idea that we had a whole film crew coming out in the next month, and we just had to dig up any interview that we could find of the people who really were involved with this story on the West Coast. And it's a lot easier for us on the East Coast because we could just travel down to DC, but with the West Coast, it was like we had one shot to accomplish this. And maybe Sherry just read the desperation in our in our eyes of how much we
No,
talked to her and how big she loomed in this story.
no, I will tell you, you should know this because you're going to have future interviews. When you walked in my living room, you knew every name. You knew everything about the octopus story. I call it octopus language, and you spoke it. You knew the book better than I know the book, okay? The Last Circle. And I was so impressed with your knowledge of it. Hey, we could talk any name, and you knew exactly everything there was to know about it. So we could communicate, you know? And so that's when I decided to do the interview, was
I
because
think that
that, yeah.
I just want
Go
to
ahead.
interject. I think that's what was really fun for us on the crew. Me in particular was seeing two kindred spirits, Christian and you, who are separated by, time and space, but they get together in the same room and they're talking the same language. It's like, two long lost twins or something who can finally communicate with somebody because there's so much information, there's so many stories that only they really know, and they're the only people who have genuine, true fascination with it. And it was just hilarious seeing you guys get together and just chop it up together about all this stuff.
Oh
Th-
yeah, see
Back
this guy just come in and both of you and knew everything, and you were
back
correcting me. You were correcting me when I would get some of my dates or whatever. You would actually give me information to get it straight. There was one more thing I want to mention. You interviewed people that nobody ever interviewed. I mean, you were going up to doors and tracking people down. I will never know how you found these people. And you know who I'm talking about, Glenn, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you got the interview with out at Cabazon and whatnot. These are people that nobody's ever interviewed before. So you've added a lot to the story.
In 2016, I was requesting to get all of the documents, the original documents that belonged to Michael, because there are other documents in there that relate to legal evidence that I have in Australia. I was assisting Michael and his legal team to present a case to a judge to have him released from prison, given that all of his testimony that he provided under oath to the US court was true. All of his testimony that he provided in the affidavit to Bill Hamilton relating to the Promus software is true. And hence my motive was to help him to protect his intellectual property, given that that's my expertise. And so, having witnessed firsthand Cherie Seymour making a promise to me that she was happy to transfer it to me, she'd finished her book, and that she doesn't need it anymore, there was no legal reason for her to hold on to the original documents. Her book is complete. Most of what she talks about is fantasy, irrelevant, and means nothing. All she's doing is she's written a book based on tricking the wife of Bobby Riconosciuto to let her have all the documents. Bobby Riconosciuto needed the originals in order to build a legal defense for Michael. I was also doing the same in 2016, and it will be revealed in future podcasts that it is my testimony that helped Michael be released from prison. And so the motivation for her to hold on to the originals, to renege on her agreement, she admitted to me in audio and email correspondence that she acknowledged that the documents legally belonged to Michael and not her, and that she had received official notification from the legal owner that she was to send them immediately to me in Australia. It wasn't for her to decide, and it certainly wasn't for Chris Milligan to decide that Michael cannot have his original documents. And so you will find that in 2004, there are 2 Australian documentaries on intellectual property. My evidence that the world's premier institution in the world, the most trusted institution, the Johns Hopkins institutions, had deceived me, my investors in Australia, and had stolen my intellectual property and put it into a patent under their own name, and also had sold to me stolen intellectual property. So I think the theft of intellectual property is my expertise. And so what Cherie Seymour has done is totally, in my opinion, totally unethical, immoral, and illegal. And to then give it on camera, on a Netflix series, to be exploited for commercial gain for Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats and herself is also unethical, and to make commercial profit. So I am still insisting that the chairman, the board of directors of Netflix, and their attorney respond to my request. Do you share my values and standards for ethics, ethical behavior with intellectual property, and also deceiving Trey Casolaro, the son of Danny Casolaro, myself, and also Gordon Savell, and Michael Riconosciuto, and Bill Hamilton, to produce a series that is maliciously defaming people, deliberately withholding key evidence. Who else should know that? Well, Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats in their response. We looked at the materials you provided and watched the Australian news segments about your struggle with Johns Hopkins. It's absolutely unconscionable what's happened to you. That's an admission, I think, in a court that what they're doing is that they understand perfectly what they're doing when they're taking stolen property, intellectual property that belongs to Michael. And it was to be provided to me, not to them. I think the fact that they watched it, they understood it. In my email correspondence with Netflix, I have indicated that they should watch those 2 documentaries. Given that I'm the former science policy advisor to Australia for Honourable John Howard's Federal Liberal Party, our longest serving Prime Minister, and given my expertise to establish institutions of trust for an encryption key with United Nations SEAL program, with the Johns Hopkins, and also again over in Switzerland with the Swiss government World Health Organization, I think my credibility is second to none, and I'm expecting that Netflix does share my standards and the community standards. How can you allow these producers to do a series based on stolen, allegedly stolen intellectual property that belongs to Michael Riconosciuto, and then they have a free platform to defame Michael Riconosciuto and Bill Hamilton, and then while promoting the Netflix series they're defaming me? I think my knowledge on these issues is second to none. There is no excuse for the attorneys of Netflix. This is available publicly. that a serious allegation that the intellectual property and documents were stolen was put onto Amazon with the publicity based on The Last Circle, published by Cherie Seymour and Chris Milligan. Those allegations were raised directly with Chris Milligan. Anita Langley met with Chris Milligan over dinner and raised these serious concerns directly with him. So for Chris Milligan to intervene and insist that Michael cannot have his original documents and they're not to be sent to me in Australia, who's trying to get him out of prison, is highly unethical. There's no excuse for anyone. The fact that Chris Milligan has stated that he needed to keep them in case there's any litigation resulting from the book published by Cherie Seymour, The Last Circle, based on the documents that are allegedly stolen, and for producing the Netflix series where it's being filmed, that they're copying all those documents. They're using those documents as their research. Document letterheads from Cabazon, the arms deals, everything to do with Michael's life. Bill Hamilton's research, Michael's affidavits that he's done to help Bill Hamilton. There is no defence. Has Netflix willingly provided a platform for stolen property to be exploited commercially, to make money, and use it also to maliciously defame Michael Riconosciuto, Bill Hamilton, and myself when promoting the Netflix series? The evidence is overwhelming. Throughout 2018 to 24, Christian Hansen and Zachary Treats requested access to my 24 years of credible research investigation, recorded interviews with witnesses, documentary evidence, and my recorded podcasts. They promised they were totally committed to producing credible TV documentary series to publicly expose the truth about the Promus software affair and the death of Danny Casolaro. They deceived and lied to Trey Casolaro and me. Again, on the 25th of September, I wrote to John Raphael Olivia, responsible for Netflix publicity, documentaries, and non-fiction. He assured me that he'd pass all my correspondence on to the chairman, the board, and their attorney. I have not heard back from them. They have not responded. I'm now releasing copies of this on the podcast. I have received no evidence that they share my high standards of credibility and integrity or the community's expectations. The evidence is overwhelming that Netflix series gets high ratings based on a lie, on deception, withholding key information, but more importantly, is using stolen property that belongs rightfully to Michael Riconosciuto and was legally instructed to be transferred to me, not to Christian Hansen or Zachary Treats or Cherie Seymour, to then go on and make a Netflix series as a platform to promote a conspiracy and maliciously defame people. On the 5th of March 24, whilst promoting the American Conspiracy, the Octopus Murders for Netflix, Chris Milligan and his team hosted their own interview podcast promoting it, interviewing Cherie Seymour, Christian Hansen, Zachary Treats, confirming that the whole Netflix series is based upon Cherie Seymour's book, The Last Circle, and they copied and exploited the alleged stolen documents and intellectual property that legally belongs to Michael Riconosciuto and was legally instructed to be transferred to me in Australia in 2016. In this podcast that I'm going to play for you, it's sickening. They're talking about their expertise in the death of Danny Casolaro's investigation, the octopus, the Promus software scandal. These clowns don't even know what Promus is, for God's sake. They then go on and talk about all of the octopus murders and the links with the mafia, Cali drug cartel, the US Department of Justice. Had Cherie Seymour not deceived Bobby Riconosciuto, insisting that she needed the original documents to write her book? It wasn't to write a book, it was to use them with a high-level US government official who wanted to help Michael get released from prison. That did not happen. In fact, what alternatively happened from the evidence is she wanted to visit Robert Booth Nichols and interview him, which she boasts about. Then Robert Booth Nichols tells her that Michael's going to have her killed. Isn't that interesting? That Robert Booth Nichols, who's linked with the mafia, Yakuza, drugs and arms through Australia, comes to Australia in 2004 to threaten my life, given that I'm meeting with the Royal Commissioners for Caustic and Royal Commission that Danny Casolaro was going to come across to speak about and investigate. Isn't it interesting that he's the source of this information for Cherie Seymour? In my recorded interviews with Michael Riconosciuto, he confirms that an allegation was made that he was going to have Cherie Seymour killed. Michael said that he was taken to a holding cell and was severely beaten and assaulted by guards with brain injuries and had to be hospitalised. Did you make that allegation to the FBI, Cherie Seymour? Because our interviews with Lou Barfardi also show that someone made allegations against Michael, having him assaulted and hospitalised with brain damage. And then when he provides legitimate evidence, advance warning for 9/11, it's ignored by FBI and White House, given those allegations were made. Lou Barfardi has given a full interview and I have all his documents. He tried desperately to prevent 9/11 from happening. Michael Riconosciuto had legitimate legal evidence that was totally ignored because people are making stupid claims against him and then publishing a book based on his documents, making a Netflix series that maliciously defames him, Bill Hamilton. And when you guys decide to defame me, then I know you're full of it all. You're absolutely lacking in ethics, morality of any kind. Because I know I'm credible, and I know Bill Hamilton's credible, and I know Michael's credible with the testimony that he's given in court on matters in Australia relating to arms, drugs, mafia, CIA, and the theft of the Promus software. And so I'm going to invite the viewers now to listen to this self-praise of Chris Milligan, Christian Hansen, Zachary Treats, together with Cherie Seymour, telling us how much of a credit they are to each other, how much they all know, and the credit that the film does for Danny Casolaro, who they defame. It's just unbelievable that Netflix would support this crap to be publicised worldwide based on allegedly stolen property, malicious defamation, and clowns that know nothing about anything that they're talking about.
Okay, because you were trying to figure out how come all these drugs were there around Maricopa, right?
Well, not just
Yeah.
the weeds. No, the real life, really scary, really bizarre con men, criminal spies that other reporters only would talk about or maybe talk to on the phone. You became their best buddy or what? No, you got right in there. You met them. You went. That was amazing.
Followed 3 months after Danny Catholaro's demise, his death. I jumped on the trail and I followed it. And and this is something I would like to mention. I followed all this. I had his documents that I got from the university. They were still archiving them. And I started following his trail. And the story, just like what you have in the documentary, the story is the story. In other words, you can go at the story from different angles, but the truth is still the truth. And what's so amazing to me when I saw the documentary is that it follows the exact same trail I followed. You came to all the same conclusions that I did, completely separately from me, completely individually. And we came to the same conclusions and found the same facts. And that to me was amazing to see to see your investigation was completely separate from mine, and yet we all came to the same truths that Danny did.
It's sort of like a peer-reviewed journal or something.
It was amazing. I want to congratulate both of you. You've done everyone proud, and you've done especially Danny Casolaro proud.
So did you enjoy their self-congratulating podcast, praising each other's expertise, but the insult at the end, that the Netflix series is a credit to Danny Casolaro? That's a joke. When Christian Hansen says the only person in the room with Danny Casolaro that could have killed Danny Casolaro is Danny Casolaro, how can that be a credit to Danny Casolaro? And to say that he's never seen any evidence that confirms he didn't commit suicide is a lie. As I've shown you, we provided them with credible recorded interviews with key witnesses. They had the recordings. They had the transcripts. We were willing to help them to expose the truth. And as you can see, it's just been one huge game of deception from the beginning to the end. The fact is that the disturbing Australian evidence that's credible was hidden by Christian Hansen, Zachary Treats, and Anne Klink, who worked for Earl Bryan. Our book, which will be released at the end of the year, will become the script for a TV series, at least 5 seasons. We have so many recorded interviews, thousands of them. As Christian Hansen's running around trying to interview all the people that we know and have asked and seeing if he can get it recorded as his own interview, they wouldn't talk to him. More importantly, he exposed nothing. He lost the opportunity, but I'm more disappointed with Cherie Seymour. I was helping Michael and his attorneys to get him out of prison. Had she provided those documents to me, I could have got him out earlier. The documents that I do have from my own sources are credible and proven. There is no legal reason for Chris Milligan or Cherie Seymour to refuse Michael Riconosciuto's request that all boxes of the original documents that they took from his wife through deception, they did not need them. But if they believe that they need to keep them because of litigation, then it's no defence for them. Also, I don't think it's defence for Netflix to continue to support them using stolen material. The fact that they've been defaming Michael, Bill Hamilton and myself and Gordon Savell and deceived the son of Danny Casolaro, I cannot believe, and I don't think the community would accept it, that Netflix wants to bankroll them to do a follow-up series. I receive letters from prime ministers. I have a signed agreement for a $100 million settlement with the former US president's company, Gerald Ford, with their request if they could put secure lines into my house, would I share the evidence that I have relating to CIA activities in Australia. Why do you think they're offering to do that for me? Is it possible that my story is the real story of evidence? Danny Casolaro was going to expose the dismissal of Gough Whitlam, the $4 billion Arab loans affair in 1975. On my website, The 6i, you will see that I've uncovered all the evidence that Danny Casolaro had, that he was provided by Michael Riconosciuto, that is proven correct. I have a whole podcast showing that I've traced all of that $4 billion Arab loan that brought down the Australian Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam, involving Gerald Ford. Isn't that interesting? The same guy offering $100 million settlement for me is the guy that's the president at the time, with Henry Kissinger, Ted Shackley, Frank Gallucci, and Robert Booth Nichols. Isn't that wonderful? With what William Colby. I've traced it to CIA's banks, including the bank, the original bank, the founders of BCCI. He also was going to expose the evidence that CIA, Ted Shackley, Ed Wilson, Thomas Clines, Robert Booth Nichols, Michael Hand were all involved with money laundering drugs and arms through Australia through the Nugan Bank. He was also exposing the October surprise evidence. He was exposing also that Wackenhut, Cabazon Arms, Cabazon Casino, linked to the Mafia, Gambino Mafia, linked with Robert Booth Nichols and companies in Australia with all their activities. In fact, producing a TV series right now which will show that Robert Booth Nichols was in Australia training Osman bin Laden how to use the weapons in our deserts in Western Australia. The company was linked to the Mafia, involves over $500 million of stock fraud. The evidence was identified by FBI to the Australian Federal Police. The evidence of FIDCO, its links with NSA's CSS division, CIA, NSC, Mafia, Yakuza, Medellin, Cartel. Categorically, that evidence also links back to Robert Booth Nichols and Pan Am 103, the bombing. I have podcasts on that. Danny Casolaro was exposing the Costigan Royal Commission, the drugs and arms and money laundering of all the transactions of Robert Booth Nichols together with Thomas Clines, Ted Shackley, Michael Hand, Ed Wilson. We have the definitive proof on that. He was also exposing BCCI, involved with the checks and the transactions for the tow missiles. I've done a podcast on that. I also have the evidence of Iran-Contra arms and drugs, links with all of the attorneys linking back to Wackenhut. Danny Casolaro was exposing that. But he was also exposing the $2.5 billion brokers of death arms drugs deal involving CIA front companies, French intelligence companies, and Israeli companies in Singapore. The transactions also go to Iraq. And also CIA's Promise Swift banking software. He was following the evidence that the Promise software was being used for the money laundering operations of BCCI, Citibank. And I've proven that that involves Earl Bryan's companies and Rupert Murdoch's companies. See, in 2004, I'm meeting with Douglas Mayer, the Queen Counsellor to Costigan. And behind closed doors, Michael's letters are given to me on certain matters, and he confirms that it's true. Isn't that amazing? That the evidence that Michael's giving in court, the evidence that he has in his records, that Cherie Seymour has no possible understanding of, was understood by me in 2004 behind closed doors. Maybe that's the reason Robert Booth Nichols came to Australia in 2004 to threaten my life. Michael had written to me confirming the first application was for the tracking of Soviet submarines, and it was installed for US Trident submarines. I've proven all those transactions involve Hadron Inc. Compute. John Hopkins, my partner. John Hopkins was Bill Hamilton, Inslaw's partner as well. Isn't that interesting? He also confirmed the second one was it was put into Citibank for the transactions for Swift banking. Isn't it interesting that President Ford, former president, turns up offering to negotiate the $100 million for me, and he's on the board of Citibank with the chairman of John Hopkins Trustees. Perhaps that's the reason they're requesting if I'd be willing to have a secure line put in to show them that I've got the evidence that CIA is involved in these transactions. I had those in 2001. I think, Christian Hansen, you're 11 years old, still at secondary school. My podcast confirmed categorically that Danny Casolaro was exposing the $4 billion Arab loan, Harry Gillam, Eric Z. Cowles, Robert Booth Nichols, spearheaded by Gerald Ford, Henry Kissinger, William Gold, Ted Shackley, Frank Colucci, and Michael Hand. I've also proven in a whole lot of podcasts on my website all of the evidence of the money laundering of drugs and arms and gold bullion through Australia with Nugan Bank. Linked back to Wackenhut, Armtech, with Robert Booth Nichols, Peter Zukoski, John P. Nichols, and also with Michael's companies Recovery Technology, Paul Maraska, Michael Riconosciuto, with all the gold bullion going through Southern Goldfields Mining Resources with Michael Hand, Frank Nugan, Jeffrey Stokes, Common Director. Armtech, Western Australia, linked with the mafia, arms deals. Danny Casolaro had that evidence and was coming to Australia. Most important thing was 5 Half Moon Street. That's where the documents are sold to bring down our Australian Prime Minister for the $4 billion Arab loan by Harry Gillam. I've got the video in my podcast of him talking about it at his apartment, 5 Half Moon Street, Mayfair. Surprising, it's the same apartment that Robert Booth Nichols calls Tony Casolaro, Wendy Weaver, to express his condolences for the death of Danny Casolaro. It's the address of his on his license to carry a concealed machine gun in the FBI records. And hence my evidence attracts Robert Boot Nichols when Michael is sharing things to me that I totally understand in 2004. See, my journey started in 97, right through exposing the money laundering of gold bullion with Citibank, when they destroyed my encryption companies twice, involving the Johns Hopkins institutions, KPMG, who are the partners of Bill Hamilton, but also the auditors of Citibank, and Johns Hopkins institutions. And goes right through Project Hammer and CIA Operation Still Point. See, I have the gold transactions related to parties linked to the area that Danny Casolaro was investigating. I brought that to the attention to United Nations Office of Internal Investigations oversight in 2001, and this is what triggered John Hopkins to take steps, and for former President Gerald Ford, Brent Scowcroft, Karl Rove, and other intelligence people turning up in my life. And so, in 2001, a report comes out. I'm giving evidence about the bogus Prince United Nations SEAL program, and I confirm that the company owned by Rupert Murdoch is intimately involved with everything. And in my forthcoming podcast, I'll give you the press releases that Murdoch's company developed the software for James Baker, Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury. He was using it for the planning of Desert Storm. It's the same software that Robert Hanssen was selling the Russians and Osman bin Laden. It uses artificial intelligence, and it's linked in to follow the money. Go to my website, the 6i website. You'll find that at https the6i.org/podcast. You will see that there are many credible podcasts, and we have thousands of more interviews that are recorded, legal documents that I plan to release in a 5-season TV series to reveal the truth and the cover-up of the death of Danny Casolaro. And I will be waiting to see if the chairman, the board of directors, share my standards and values of ethics and the community's standards of ethics behaviour when producing a TV documentary series that's supposed to give credit to the death of Danny Casolaro, when in fact it really is exploiting stolen property for commercial gain and fame, and withheld all the key evidence that could have won justice for Trey Casolaro, the son of Danny Casolaro, who lost his life when trying to expose the truth.